Welcome to Talk Mental Health with Logan Noon. This is episode 29, 7 Ways to Stay Mentally Healthy During Finals. This episode is going to be nice and quick. This episode is specifically for any student that's going through finals right now. Now, being that I'm a medical student, I'm mostly going to be talking about ways that I stay mentally healthy during medical school, but I really think this can be applicable for anyone that's maybe even in junior high, college, law school, nursing school. It doesn't really matter. I think all of us really need to pay attention to our mental health during finals, and I also think that will bring better grades even if you can do these things properly and on a long-term scale. So let's just kind of get right into it. Number 1, stay human. What do I mean by that? Okay, stay human. You are not only a medical student. You are not only a law student, nursing student, whatever. But for me, medical student. I have to literally remind myself that I am a son. I am a brother. I am a spouse. I am still an amazing parent to 2 awesome cats. And I am a friend. And I need to still practice my relationships with all of those people, because if I solely focus on being a medical student, I absolutely lose my mind. So I think it's still important to develop those relationships in the midst of finals. Now, I totally understand and I totally respect that you cannot talk to your spouse, your mom, your dad, for as long as you want to during finals week. I get that. However, that number should not be 0. So what I do is I tell my spouse and I tell my family exactly what my exam schedule is going to be like in the next week. So for me, I have a huge test next Friday, the last neuro test. So what I tell them is, hey, over the next few days, I'm going to be able to talk to you guys quite a bit. But, leading up to that test is going to be less and less. But I still want to hear from you guys. We're just going to have to keep our conversations to, 5 minutes or less. I really do the same thing with my wife. I try to plan dates after I just finished an examination, and I give her a heads up, like, hey, listen, I might not be in the best mood around this exam time, but let's still plan a short special date that we can do together. Maybe we can watch a 20-minute episode of The Office and have a good laugh together. It's not going to be that nice, long, romantic date that I really want and desire. But during this finals week, I do want that little bit of affection and time with you. So that was number 1, stay human. Number 2, exercise. Okay, now that's kind of an easy one. Everyone always yells this one, oh, exercise. Yes, I know. Now, last year around this time, I was extremely struggling in school. Okay, I was almost failing out of anatomy, of MSK, which is the musculoskeletal unit. I was really, really, really struggling. And I would always sacrifice my exercise time because I needed to study more. That's what I thought would help get me better grades, and to some extent that is true. However, I would absolutely lose my mind mentally. When I don't exercise, I become really fidgety, really irritable, my sleep starts to go off the train. It's just bad news bears. So what I think for exercise, especially during finals week, is you can kind of combine exercise with studying. Now, some people don't think that this is a great method, but here's what I do. Now, I'm a big fan of Boards and Beyond. If you're a medical student, I highly, highly, highly suggest Boards and Beyond. It's absolutely awesome. So what I do is I put Boards and Beyond on my iPad. I bring that iPad to the gym, and when I'm on the elliptical, I'm watching some of those videos to educate myself, or I'm going through flashcards. And what I find actually is I actually comprehend the material better. And I think that's because increased blood flow. Maybe my heart rate's up. Maybe my veins and arteries are dilating, so I'm just getting more blood to my brain, and therefore I can actually comprehend this crazy, complex medical knowledge better. I don't know. Now, that being said, I don't get as good of a workout in when I'm there trying to educate myself like this. However, I do think some exercise is better than nothing, because normally, at least most of my medical school studies, I am sitting in a chair all the time. So it's a nice way to break up the pace. Now, some people think that their exercise should be their break from studying, and I do think that's really smart too. It just Personally, for me, I try to take advantage of that time, and I don't want to sacrifice that time exercising. If you do want to totally take a break from studying and just focus on exercise, I think that's great. But during finals week, focus on doing those short workouts. For me, I don't really like short workouts so much, so I'll still go to the gym for about an hour, and that's why I'll watch those videos and really try to take my time with it. But I think maybe taking a 20 or 30-minute exercise break away from your studies is so imperative to maintain that mental health state of mind during finals week. Now, exercise also helps out with the next tip that I wanted to talk about. Focus on sleep. Now, this is another kind of like, well, duh, Logan, thanks for the great frickin' advice here. I get it. But let me tell you some stories here, kids, okay? Last year, like when I said I was really struggling in school, I especially struggled with insomnia around testing time. I really got test-induced anxiety. And especially the night right before a test, I would try to get about 5 hours of sleep, 6 hours of sleep, but in reality, I probably only got about 2 to 3. Now, what I was doing is I would study all the way up until about midnight or 1 a.m. My test would be typically at 8 a.m., so I would try to study, go brush my teeth, go right to bed, and fall asleep. Brains don't work like that. You cannot just, at least mine, not just go strictly from studying hardcore, your sympathetic system is going crazy, you're so worried about this test tomorrow, to immediately being able to hit your pillow and absolutely pass out. So some of my biggest tips for sleep is, one, you need to build in what I have scientifically termed stupid time. What do I mean by stupid time? So what I do this year, instead of studying, all the way up until that moment I want to go to sleep, if I have an 8 a.m. test the next day, I will stop my studying at 10:30. I have to. I don't care if I don't feel like I know the material or whatever. I absolutely have to stop at 10:30 at night. I'll give myself about 45 minutes to an hour of stupid time. And what I mean by this is just time to just totally decompress, take my mind off of medicine. I might play with the cats. I might talk with my wife. I typically try to turn on something funny. I'm really into comedy specials. If you guys haven't seen the new Trevor Noah special on Netflix or Joe Rogan's new special on Netflix, I highly suggest that. I suggest turning those on right before you go to sleep, because when you are right before that big final, you are so absolutely worried. I get what it feels like. I've had that anxiety of, oh my God, if I don't do well on this final, I am not going to pass this test. And it keeps you up all night. However, the power of laughter is incredible. And if you can get yourself laughing before you go to sleep, I think you're much, much, much more likely to get a high quality night of sleep. And if you get a high quality night of sleep, you're going to come into that test nice and fresh and prepared and ready to perform well. Also, what I think is really important about sleep is you have to almost train your body. Most of my tests in medical school are at 8 a.m. in the morning. I am not a morning person, so I kind of struggle with this. So those days leading up into the test, though, I try to train my body on what it's going to be like to wake up at 6 a.m. Because if I don't have to in medical school, I do try to take advantage of sleeping in. I'm not one of those people that go to class. I do the online listening kind of thing, and I can do it on my own schedule. It's absolutely fantastic. I'll talk about that in a different episode. But the days leading up into a test, I think you should be waking up essentially around the same time that you do on actual test day. I just think that's going to help get your body in that right circadian rhythm, and you are able to get a good night rest before the day of the test. Okay, moving on to the next topic, number 4. Number 4 suggestion, take frequent, short study breaks. I'm a big fan of using a timer when I study. I like to set a timer for about probably 20 to 25 minutes or so. Really, really short. I set that timer. I put my phone on airplane mode. I don't want any distractions, and I try to go all in. I try to absolutely study as hard as I can on whatever material I'm doing, whether it's, flashcards, practice questions, watching those videos. And it's very difficult to stay engaged on only medicine for that long. Sometimes it's just really material that you're banging your head up against the wall and you're like, I would rather be doing anything else right now than learning all the microbe guts and blah, blah, blah. It's just really challenging. So what I do, I set that timer for 25 minutes. I give myself about a 5-minute break to let my ADD go wild. Maybe I'll go on my phone. Maybe I'll watch a YouTube video. I'm big into watching videos of cars and skiing, or maybe I'll go play with my cats. Maybe that's the time I'll be able to just say, hey wife, how you doing? I love you. I hate studying right now, but give me kisses. Once that 5-minute timer goes off, though, I got to go right back into studying. I think this is a much healthier approach rather than saying, okay, I'm going to study for 4 hours straight and then I'll give myself an hour break. I think it's much, much more productive to really shrink all of that and take more frequent breaks, but everything is much shorter. Take a 5-minute break and all that. All right, moving on to the next tip. Number 5, meditation. I think everyone, regardless of what situation you're in, should be practicing regular meditation. I am not talking about an hour worth of meditation. I suggest 10 minutes of meditation every day. Listen, I'm not perfect either. I don't get it done every single day, but I try my best. Some days are easier than others. I think it's best to try to do meditation first thing in the morning, 10 minutes. You have no excuses. Wake up 10 minutes earlier, right when you get out of bed, do it. Being that we all have smartphones on us essentially at all times during the day, I think there's some really good apps that I like. Sam Harris actually just came out with a new app that it does cost money, but the first 10 days or so are like free. That one's called Waking Up. I also really like Headspace and also 10% Happier. These are all apps on your phone. They do give you like 10 days for free, but then eventually it does cost money. I've never actually paid for any of them because I'm a broke med student. So what I also suggest, if you don't want to use those apps, is go on YouTube and just search mindful meditation. Jon Kabat-Zinn is really the founder of mindful meditation. And that's what I would do. Because I think meditation just helps me kind of put my anxiety at bay, or at least recognize my anxiety and not get so lost in all the emotions of it. One thing I get really frustrated when I talk about meditation is people tell me, well, I can't clear my mind. That's literally the equivalent of someone who's overweight saying, well, I can't go on the treadmill. I'm not good at running. Or that's someone saying, I can't do yoga. I'm not very flexible. Like, no crap. Unless you do these things every single day, you're not going to get better at the activity. Meditation is not supposed to clear your mind necessarily. Meditation is supposed to just recognize when your mind starts to race again and when your thought process starts to just go in, and you're supposed to be practicing bringing yourself back into focus. And I actually find this really helps me out a lot in my test taking. As a medical student, I have to take these tests that are like 2.5 hours long, super, super long. And I typically can keep my meditation really well for the first maybe 90 minutes, let's say. Then, an hour and a half in, I'm starting to lose my mind. I'll be reading a passage, and I'll be like, dude, what are we talking about? Oh my God. Like, I remember last test I took, I kept having Christmas music stuck in my head the whole time. And then I started thinking about lunch, and I was like, man, dude, that burrito is going to taste so good once I get finished with this damn neuro test. But I wasn't finished with the test yet. I still had to focus on the test. So what I did is I did like a little mini meditation in that test. For about 30 seconds or maybe a minute, I just kind of sat there with my eyes closed, and I focused on breathing in and breathing out, and I think about, burrito de tripa, muy rico. But, no, I can't think about the burrito right now. I gotta focus on this test, focus on my breathing. And it helped me get back into focus and finish that test strong. So I think every single person out there should be meditating. Next tip. Focus on being in competition with yourself versus competing with others. And I know this is kind of a weird one because essentially taking a test is normally off of a bell curve. You are literally competing against every single person sitting next to you. But comparison is the thief of joy. It really will make you feel like a piece of crap. And listen, I'm not perfect at this. This past test, I worked so hard. I know I worked harder, essentially, maybe put in more time than some of my colleagues who actually beat me on that test. And it was very, very frustrating, and I kind of felt like a piece of crap, to be honest. And I wasn't being mentally healthy in that moment. And I had to remind myself it's not about comparing myself to others. It's about comparing myself to who I was yesterday and how I move forward. And so I honestly have to just keep reminding myself that, like, okay, in medical school, I know I'm always comparing myself against everyone else. I know board scores is essentially comparing myself against everybody else. But I just want to be the best version of Logan Noon. And I want to take whatever practices I can to improve my study abilities, to improve my physical abilities in the gym, lose weight. I just want to focus on making myself better. And I think if you can really focus on that mentality, it's much better and much easier to stay mentally healthy. Okay, and the last tip, the 7th tip I have to suggest for you to stay mentally healthy during finals week is imagine the worst case scenario. I know this can be very scary. I know what it's like to fail a test. And I've had friends of mine who have failed entire classes that they have to repeat. Maybe they even have to repeat an entire year of medical school. It sucks. And it is really a worst case scenario. But I think actually imagining what that worst case scenario is like prior to potentially experiencing it really helps put everything at bay. I know failing a college class, failing a test seems like the worst thing in the world. But think about that and then take a step back. Think about your health. Think about how you're able to still get up out of the bed in the morning. Maybe go for a walk. Maybe go exercise. Maybe you have a roof over your head. Maybe you're like me and you have 2 awesome cats. You have an amazing wife. You have an amazing family. Regardless of how you do on the test, you're still going to have all of those things. So I think if you can focus on gratitude and the things that you still do have and you're thankful for, it really just helps take the sting out of that potential worst case scenario and be like, you know what? I don't know what's going to happen on this damn test. I don't know if I'm going to pass, but I am going to try as hard as I damn can. And regardless of what happens, I'm going to sit there and know that I tried my hardest. And at the end of the day, I know that I am still a son. I am still a brother. I am still a husband. I still have an apartment. I can still go out in golfing and still go skiing. All these things that I love to do. And I am still a human at the end of the day. Medicine takes so much of our time and energy. I think that is really the key of burnout and medical students and physicians. And I think the more that we can all remind ourselves that we are still human, we still need to be patients ourselves and pay attention specifically to our mental health, we're going to do much better in school, we're going to do much better handling our residency, and we're going to be much better physicians at the end of the day that won't get burned out. I want to thank you so much for tuning into this short episode today. If you guys like this episode, please rate the podcast. Also, I'm looking for ideas. I'm considering changing the name of this podcast. Talk Mental Health with Logan Noon is okay. However, it's a little bit long. Not crazy about it. So if you have any ideas, any suggestions for me, I'd love to hear them. You can reach out to me on Facebook and Instagram, just at Logan Noon. The Noon is spelt with an E at the end, so I will be Dr. No One at your service eventually, one day, years from now. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. If you have finals over these next few weeks, I wish you the best of luck. Please try these tips. Let me know if they work for you. And once again, thank you so much for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it.